We'll start the episode off with Max, Tetrax, and Technorg teaching Ben about plumber tech to help him familiarize with the ins and outs of how it works. Ben calls out to Gwen, asking if she's sure she didn't want to come learn about this stuff too, but she says that technology is your thing, magic is mine, while going through stuff on her laptop about various forms of magical artifacts. Ben does mention that none of the stuff she finds online actually works, and asks how she'd get any better if she can't actually study. Technorg states that he does have a point, though something on Tetrax's suit beeps and he says that he has to go now as a job was calling and so he had to get to it, and to drop off Vigma for the bounty before someone else tries to jack his prisoner, and so prepares to leave in his ship. Suggesting that Technorg go too and that he'd make a great partner, the Detrovite agrees to go with him as Ben had been the one that suggested it, and so those two headed on off as Max continues to teach Ben more about plumbers and their technology, though Gwen gets excited and shows them a magic convention was going to be happening nearby. Ben just thinks it'll be fun to get to be a normal kid for a while and agrees with Gwen about going, and so Max agrees to take them. Though when they got there, Gwen got to be disappointed and sat down at a fountain looking defeated as Ben decided to try his luck and begins to look around. Finding an armband that kind of matched Gwen's shirt, he noticed that the thing in it looked sort of like those charms Hex used and bought it from the woman working there. Going over to her, Ben then gives the band to Gwen, who recognizes that it has a charm in it too. At first she assumed Ben stole it since he's not exactly the best with money, though he shows her the receipt, surprising her. Gwen asks how he has money exactly, and Ben explained that Tetrax split the bounties on Crab and 66 with him and Grandpa helped him get converted over to American money. Looking surprised by this, Gwen tries on the band and finds that it fit really well, and just like the luck charm, it glowed and color surrounded Gwen, surprising them. She then hugged him, thanking Ben, causing him to blush a bit and tell her she's welcome, though they soon hear someone screaming out for help, and so Ben runs off to see what he can do for the situation. Ben nods to Gwen and begins to come up with a plan for what's going on. He suggests that Gwen help get the civilians clear while he dealt with the renegade chopper, calling her lucky girl as he did so, to which she nodded and went to do just that. While Stinkfly, he fires off goo at the blades of the helicopter, which gunk up and get stuck to the copter, meaning it doesn't down some electrical wires like in the show. He then flies under it as it's falling and slowly begins to lower it down, getting the others to safety as Gwen had changed into her Lucky Girl costume and directed the civilians to safety. Ben and Gwen actually make a pretty good team here. And when he starts to time out, the two fly off with her riding on his back, and landing someplace no one would see them, he changes back. Later on, the two attend an amateur magic show, and basically it plays out the same, with Ben agreeing to be a part of a magic trick. Though before it can happen, Hex appears with a silver-haired girl beside him. When Hex starts causing trouble, Gwen changes into her Lucky Girl costume again, and since Ben hadn't been Wildmud here, he decides to transform into a different alien. Instead, we get Diamond Head, who tackles Hex to the ground and proceeds to fight him, though the latter orders Charmcaster to do something. Charmcaster does as she is told, but clearly looks scared by whatever was going on and sent metal rings at Diamond Head, who just looked at her like she was stupid, though that gave the villain time to free himself and blast Ben in the back, knocking him off them. The girl then proceeds to use those same rings on Gwen. Max actually throws something at Charmcaster that explodes into smoke, causing her to look dazed before Gwen then kicked her in the face, sending her crashing backwards onto the backstage area. Though Hex threatens Gwen with his staff, a large crystal juts up out of the ground between the two of them, with Ben reminding Hex he was still there. Growing angry, Hex then uses his magic to send all three of our heroes outwards into the hedge maze that was outside the building. As they regain themselves, they run off as some strange stone creatures start to chase them, and Hex teleports into the maze with Charmcaster, telling her to drive them towards him, which she agrees to, speaking softly as if she was scared of the man in front of her. Splitting up in the maze, Ben takes care of the creatures as Max and Gwen try to find a way out, though when she hears rustling, she assumes it's Hex and jumps over the maze wall, finding a startled Charmcaster who is trying to catch her breath, looking scared, as Gwen kicked her in the face and took her bag away. The silver-haired girl then says shakily that she didn't mean to hurt anyone, but she couldn't go against her uncle. He was too powerful, and so she didn't have a choice. Gwen, not being stupid, doesn't believe this at first, and Charmcaster introduces herself by name, then remembered that Lucky Girl and her group were the ones who beat her uncle before, and starts to tell her everything. Hex yells about Charmcaster betraying him and tries to blast them, but Diamond Head reflects it back at him, knocking him backwards through several hedge walls before timing out. The difference here is that Charmcaster was actually being genuine about her fear and not wanting to hurt anyone, and so goes with their group as they get out of the maze. Later on, we see the group in the rust bucket with Charmcaster explaining everything about how she and her uncle came to Earth, where they came from, everything. She also stated that she was afraid of her uncle because of his lust for power. Before the conversation goes further, Hex blasts the rust bucket, causing it to tumble several times before coming to a stop downhill, demanding the keystone. Though Gwen suggests breaking it too, Charmcaster says that it'll just make it worse at the moment, and so the four go out to confront Hex, with Ben grabbing something as they were the last one out. Max tells Charmcaster that now is her chance to do the right thing, and nodding, she shakily gets ready to fight. After all, if two kids could beat him, so could she. And while the two of them are going at it with their various spells, Ben tells Gwen of his idea and passes the device he was training with earlier to her. While fighting Hex, Ben changed into Cannonbolt and used his speed in ball form to charge some of the taller stuff at the convention, knocking it over while Hex had to dodge. While he was avoiding both Ben and Charmcaster's attacks, Lucky Girl called out to him and pulls the trigger on some strange shaped gun with a rounded glass barrel, the beam shooting him in the face, causing him to drop in pain while holding his eyes. Charmcaster goes to ask what that was, but Max cuts her off, saying it's a sun gun, projects a beam of light just as bright as the sun itself, or at least close to it. The effects would wear off in a few hours though, as he cuffs Hex with plumber cuffs, and thus we don't get the whole eclipse thing. The last thing that happens is Charmcaster being arrested, since she did help Hex break out of prison earlier, though Max tells her to keep her head down and he would do what he could for her. Nodding, Charmcaster agrees to do so, but not before using a spell to make the keystone turn to dust, telling Gwen she didn't need it, and gifted her a small spell book, telling her to study up while she's away.